Alright everybody, welcome back to another Xvault gaming video. Xvault here, and today I want to go over some news that came out this weekend in regards to something super interesting, super pivotal in my opinion, and in many others as well, and it has to do with Marvel IP games and licensing and properties and stuff like that in the gaming genre, and of course has to do with Xbox side of things, but it is really interesting. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump to it. Alright, so like I was saying, what I want to go over is some interesting news in regards to Marvel properties, IPs, licensing and such like that, on how Marvel approached both Sony and Microsoft and how they put the ball in their court and what they decided to do with it. So, interesting reports here. I'm just going to quickly read off and then just go over some thoughts and opinions here, so definitely stay along here. Going off, an interesting segment on Marvel Games' early history and how they reached out to both Microsoft and Sony to explore potential first-party deals, how they had to negotiate with Activision to terminate the Spider-Man deal earlier than deadline, and some extra details on Sony and Insomniac Marvel relationship and how it happened. This is from The Ultimate History of Video Games book, Volume 2, published last year if people want to validate what's here. So you can look that up to go into even more detail. Later on, of course, on Reddit and stuff, and notified folks, we have J-O-N-G, so Ong, or Ong, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but goes on to state when he needed, what he needed was a publishing partner who hadn't adopted the crappy licensed games mentality. He needed a company with an eye for long-term investments, one with a vested interest that would benefit from building a franchise. That partner would need to have a deep pool of talent, commitment to quality, and inexhaustibly deep pockets. There were three companies that fit that description. One of them, Nintendo, mostly developed games based on its own intellectual properties. Being from console first party in my past, I pinged both sides, both Xbox and PlayStation, and said, we don't have any big console deals with anyone right now. What would you like to do? Microsoft's strategy was to focus on their own IP, and they passed. He sat down with these two execs from PlayStation third party, Adam Boyes and John Drake, in August of 2014 in a conference room in Burbank. He said, we have a dream that this is possible and we could beat Arkham and have one game at least and maybe multiple games that could drive adoption of your platform. So ultimately, it goes on and on and on here, and I'm going to post this on the video here and you can go ahead and continue to read. A couple other users here as well on there, but super interesting, right? That Xbox passes on this. Now, this wasn't a Don Matrick deal. This wasn't before anything. Now, I'll post on here as well. We do have news outlets just re-verifying that Phil Spencer has taken over as head of Xbox Microsoft division, and that was in March 31st, on March 31st of 2014. So very early in 2014, this is going down. Now, I'm sure there was a lot going on for Phil to assess and try to steer the ship, so to speak, from what happened with the fallout of Don Matrick and what was the atrocity of the Xbox One. So I'll give some credit where credit is due there. But however, when you see the name, back in 2014, Marvel and the properties and the licensing, that stuff was rising. That stuff's rising. When you hear the word Marvel, you need to pump the brakes a little bit. Understand that that has some dollar signs attached to that, as well as, word of mouth, as well as attraction, as well as, a reason to jump to that platform or play on that platform. There's a lot of mentality to go along there. So it's interesting. But again, I'm sure he had a lot going on, but I'm not going to sit here and make excuses, because to me, as someone came to me and said, hey, Spider-Man, again, dollar signs are floating everywhere all over my head, because any Spider-Man property or game, whether it was garbage or mediocre, still printed money. It still sold because it's Spider-Man. One of the top selling franchises for Marvel is Spider-Man. Whoever owned Spider-Man at the time or did, or whatever the case is, anything that had Spider-Man attached to a video game sold extremely well for the most part. There's some misses, of course, a little bit, but 90% of those games sold very, very well. So when it comes down to that stuff, you're not going to be missing. And there's opportunity there. And if you have the talent behind it that can drive the games and the narrative focus and the gameplay and everything like that, there's just so much to do with world building and everything you can do with that property. Pretty mind-blowing that Microsoft went ahead and passed regardless. And I understand that the directive was probably, let's pump the brakes. Let's focus on our IPs and our own studios right now. That was 2014. We're in 2022. That's quite a few years ahead. And here we are. Phil's doing things. 2022 is not looking so great. Had a couple of delays. Now they don't really have a first-party game in 2022, minus the Forza Motorsport coming out later this year. And again, another Forza. I know this seems like a big trash take on Xbox and Microsoft, and maybe it kind of is. But it's just something that's there, right? You have the opportunity to at least play ball. Not to let Sony have the entirety of a lot of Marvel properties, right? Especially Spider-Man. I mean, that's the one to pluck out, in my opinion, if you're going to do anything with. That's the one to do it with. You know, we have some third-party stuff. We have Midnight Suns coming out this year and such. Third-party as well from the devs of XCOM and such like that. So a lot going on. Everybody can make a lot of money if done well for the Marvel licenses. And, you know, they've done the same for the DC games as well. We got a Wonder Woman game, still no gameplay, just a quick teaser. Don't know where that's at. We got Gotham Knights coming. We have, you know, all the Arkham series have done really well for the most part. You know, we got another Suicide Squad game that got delayed again, but it is coming. Looks very well done. But that stuff creates hype. It creates attention and it creates money, right? And it brings that person to the platform, whether it's multi-platform or not, but especially if it's an exclusive. And we have Wolverine coming as well for the PlayStation 5 only. Same with Spider-Man 2, PS5 only. Now that may travel to PC about a year down the road, which is to be expected more than likely. But regardless, if you want that day one, which a lot of the fans will want that day one, you're going to get that platform if you want it bad enough. So that's what drives that sale there and what drives the software sales and so on and so forth. But just kind of wanted to share that with everybody that we did, of course, get that news. I thought that was super interesting to me. It kind of widened my eyes, dropped my jaw a little bit. Like, are you kidding? They had opportunity to do something there. And again, I want to give the excuse, but I feel like Microsoft is having excuse after excuse after excuse of things, and I know it takes time. Trust me, I get it. But regardless, I just don't get it. So I've been having some conversations lately, and all I hear is a lot of excuses, and it's okay, and it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, and hopefully it does. I've always been a benefactor of that hopefully they right the ship and things happen. It just hasn't happened for so many years. So let's get the ball rolling, guys. And I know it takes time. But if Nintendo and Sony are able to do it through COVID, post-COVID, pre-COVID, what are the excuses? It's time to do something. But that's another story for another time. Just wanted to hit the Marvel IP and licensing and let you all know what I happen to find out myself. But I appreciate everybody sticking around for the entirety of the video. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate that. If you are new here, definitely like, comments, and of course, subscribe. Help out a small content creator like myself. Helps me out so much. So thank you so much, all the newcomers and the ones that have stayed with me. So much appreciated. I cannot do this without you, and it helps drive me and push me forward. I appreciate sharing my hobby and passion with all of you out there. So once again, thanks again from the bottom of my heart. We'll let you have the rest of your day back, and we'll see you next time on the next Xvault Gaming video. And until then, take care.